In this lesson, we'll finish adding color to our skyscraper. Alright, so in the last lesson we had begun working on the front side here. Now in between lessons I did do a little bit of work. I copied the gradients we had here and here to these pieces over here, as well as these pieces here. Now I also applied a darker gradient to this inside edge of these protrusions on the reverse side. So let's go ahead and focus our time right now on this center window. This is really kind of the key focal point in our composition. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is go and select both of those two shapes that make up this one continuous window that goes the entire height of the building. And let's go ahead and merge those together. We can go ahead and do that with our Shape Builder tool. It's right here in your tool panel. Just draw a path between those two shapes and merge those together. Alright, so let's go ahead and assign a color to these. I'm going to go ahead and begin with sort of a dark blue here. So I'm going to go ahead and just select that here from our color panel. And I'll tell you what, that's a little bit dark, or a little bit vibrant. Let's go over to our HSB sliders and take that saturation down, adjust that just a little bit, and also the darkness. We'll take that down quite a bit also. Alright, that's a really good start. So we've got our nice dark color here. I'm going to go ahead and use my selection tool to select that shape and copy that with a Control-C. Now I'm going to go ahead and paste that in front by doing a Control-F. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and apply a gradient here. And we'll come over to our gradient panel, and I tell you what, let's go ahead and assign a radial gradient here. And as a matter of fact, let's go ahead and choose this gradient we have already in our swatch panel. And then we'll come back over to our gradient panel and assign a radial gradient here. Well, it looks like we defaulted back. Let's go ahead and choose this gradient here. Make that radial. Alright, so grab our gradient tool and reposition this gradient just a little bit. I'm going to put this pretty high, rotate it around, and make it pretty large. So it's kind of subtle. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and change this shape to, let's go ahead and choose maybe hard light here. It's really giving it some nice vibrance there. We'll go ahead and maybe even drop the opacity just a little bit on that. Alright, so we've got two shapes layered on top of each other. Now I think I'm going to do yet another shape to... Let's go ahead and copy this shape to create sort of a screen over this. So we'll go and Control-C and Control-F again. And that's getting awful vibrant here. Let's go ahead and set this one to screen. This one's going to be a lot lower opacity as well. Let's start right there and come back to our gradient panel here. I want to set this first color stop to something really light. Let's go ahead and reduce these sliders quite a bit. To the point where we've almost got white here. And let's come back over here. Check this one out. That one looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and increase the opacity on this. You know, that's okay. I think I'm going to come back over here and check out my gradient again. Let's take a look at this color stop right here. I'm going to go ahead and maybe see if we can't drop the opacity on that. See if we can bring some of that nice deep coloration back in. It's looking pretty good right now. I think I'm going to come back over to my gradient tool at this point. Let's make this nice big gradient. And I may come back in here and lean this a little bit to the white side, expanding that just a little bit more. Just kind of tweaking my gradient up. I think that'll be good enough for right now. So let's go ahead and move on. We'll go ahead and select, we got one more piece here on the top of the skyscraper that we don't want to miss. Let's go ahead and assign a gradient to that. Grab our gradient tool and kind of morph that to fit the situation. So we'll go ahead and just redraw that, making it a nice subtle shadow back there. Kind of matches this one right here. And let's just zoom out and see how we did. I think we're looking pretty good. Like I said before, you could really take this as far as you want to. That's about as far as I want to go with this. Like I said, this course was mainly about the perspective drawing. So we'll go ahead and zoom in here, and you may notice that this shape is a little bit different than when we left off. I noticed we had these little indentations here, and I went ahead and drew a couple more shapes on our horizontal grid plane and tweaked them up so they would fit nice and flush. Let me just zoom in for you. And then I used the Pathfinder panel to merge those into our existing shape. And now it's time to go ahead and add some color to this. So let's go ahead and start with a radial gradient. Definitely don't want that radial gradient though, so let's go ahead and first kind of position the gradient where the light source is going to hit this. I kind of see it hitting right around in here. And let's go ahead and change the colors up some. Let's go ahead and first we don't want a blue to be that dark, so we'll drop some of that out. Drop these sliders down quite a bit actually. And let's come over here and hit the highlight now. I think that's starting to look pretty good. We might need to reposition that gradient just a little bit. So let me just move that over just a little bit, right over into here. And I think that's looking pretty good for right now. So let's go ahead and take that gradient and let's go ahead and create it over here as well. We'll just use our eyedropper tool and then switch to the gradient tool again and recreate this gradient and the highlight right about there. I think I may actually brighten that highlight up just a little bit here. Let's go ahead and drop this down to about 10, this down to about 4. And let's drop the magenta out of it almost completely. And we'll just replicate that change right over here. Just like that. So we've got both of the tops of those platforms colored here. Now we've got one thing left on the platforms. We've got the sides. Well, we actually have the helipad symbol as well. So I want to come in and again add a radial gradient. And let's use our gradient tool to position that highlight to kind of match up with the highlight we had over here. Expand that gradient out some. Maybe we could even darken this up just a hair. Let's go ahead and just rotate that around a little bit more and expand the gradient some more. I think that'll do nicely. So we'll go ahead and select this shape next and kind of do the same thing. Just eyedropper it and use our gradient tool and the annotator on our screen to really position that highlight where we need it to be. That actually blends pretty seamlessly. Let me come in here and brighten this highlight up some more. Maybe even shrink that gradient down some. Alright, that looks pretty good to me. So let's go ahead and just take care of this helipad symbol really fast. I'm going to go ahead and give that a nice red color, nice deep red. Actually, we're going to need to edit that text. Remember, this is actually text, so let's go ahead and edit the text itself. And in our control panel, I'll come up here and change the color. Let's get to our color sliders by holding Shift when we click that. Changing it over to CMYK mode, and we'll drop the black out, drop the yellow out, and let's drop, actually not all the yellow. Drop the cyan out, add a little more black to it. Alright, that looks pretty good. So we'll back out of isolation mode on the letter. And let's go ahead and lastly change the color of our stroke on these paths right here. Maybe give that almost a yellowish color. Raise that yellow up a little bit more. Not quite that much. Alright, so that looks pretty good. So really we've just about finished with the color, and there's one other thing that might really add to this. And I think what would add to it would be maybe a shadow right here. So I tell you what, let's go ahead and work to accomplish that. Now probably the quickest and easiest way to do that would just be with our pen tool. So tell you what, let's just come in here using the pen tool and start drawing in this shadow. We'll zoom in nice and tight here. Start it right here at this corner. And let's come over here, drop it right about here. And we're going to need to switch the coloration around on this. Let's go in and grab a nice blue. That'll work for right now. And the shadow's going to turn a corner here, so just bring it down like that. Out at sort of the same angle here. Let's end it right about there. And come over here. Let's bring it back over into here. We can adjust these anchor points if we need to, but I tell you what, let's go ahead and get rid of the color for now, because we need to bring this shadow back and sort of trace the contours of the upright portion of our building. So we'll drop an anchor point here, just continuing along here. Using my smart guides here to kind of help me position these anchor points. And one more click and we should have it. Alright, we've got our shape drawn. Now let's go ahead and use our selection tool, then we'll come over and give it some color. Let's go ahead and take some magenta out there. You know, it might be kind of nice to add a some kind of gradation to this shadow, because obviously the further away from the building, the lighter it's going to get. And we probably should go ahead and change the blend mode as well on this to multiply. And let's come over here back to our gradient. Maybe lighten this up some. Let's take it to white. Not quite to white. We'll leave a little bit of blue in there. Let's darken it up a little bit closer to the base. See how that looks. Alright, that looks pretty good. You know, that's really about going to do it. We've finished coloring our skyscraper here, and I tell you what, hopefully you've enjoyed this series of lessons dedicated to really diving in and exploring all the perspective drawing tools here in Illustrator. I personally am really curious as to what you're going to come up with using these tools. Feel free to check out our forums, post some screenshots of all the cool stuff that you create using Illustrator's perspective drawing.